There's something really quite cool happening down in Antônio Pereira in Minas Gerais, Brazil.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Well, someone's started this project on iNaturalist, basically cataloging all the local plants and animals.
Ah, iNaturalist. Yeah. Citizen science.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they've already documented over 30 species of birds just in that area. It's pretty amazing.
That really shows you, doesn't it? The biodiversity that can be hiding, practically in plain sight.
Totally.
Here.
And what's great about iNaturalist that the blog mentions is that anyone can jump in.
Right. You just need a photo, right, of whatever you see, bird, bug, flower.
Yep, snap a picture, upload it, tag the location Antônio Pereira specifically for this project, and you've contributed.
It's a fantastic way to get people involved. And the person running this specific Antonio Pereira page is even looking for collaborators, you said.
Yeah, they mentioned if anyone's interested in being an official collaborator, they should just reach out. It's very open.
That's great. But what's really fascinating for our deep dive today is how this local observation connects to, well, bigger ideas.
Right, like the fundamentals of evolution. Our sources today bridge that gap from these specific birds in Brazil to Darwin's big theories.
So let's dive into that. There's actually a blog post on the Antonio Pereira iNaturalist page called Teoria da Evolução em Antônio Pereira.
Evolution theory in Antônio Pereira. Nice.
Yeah, and it ties directly into Darwin's work. It gives a quick rundown of natural selection, the idea that, all life shares ancestors.
And that individuals with traits better suited to their environment tend to survive and reproduce more.
Exactly. Those advantageous traits get passed down. Think about the birds that maybe one has a slightly better beak for the local nuts, like you were saying.
Okay, so that bird eats better, maybe has more chicks.
Precisely. And those chicks inherit the better beak. Now, multiply that over thousands, millions of years.
Those small changes add up.
They really do. They accumulate. And eventually, you can get entirely new species branching off.
Wow. And the blog post talks about geographic isolation too, right? How does that fit in?
Ah, that's crucial. Imagine a population of birds get split maybe by mountains or, like the blog suggests, even by changes from mining activities in Antonio Pereira.
So they're separated. They can't interact or breed with the original group anymore.
Correct. Now they're on separate paths. They face different challenges, different food, maybe different predators.
So they adapt differently.
Independently. Any new mutation or adaptation that pops up in one group stays in that group. Over time, they just drift further and further apart genetically.
So the specific geography of Antonio Pereira could actually be driving some of the bird diversity they're seeing.
That's the idea the blog explores. The mountains, the altered landscapes, they create pockets where populations can evolve on their own.
It's kind of mind-bending to think the little differences they're noting. Variations in song or plumage or nesting habits are actually evidence of evolution happening.
It absolutely is. Small-scale evolution, adaptation to local pressures. And the blog uses a really neat analogy for this, the Legos analogy.
Legos, how does that work?
Well, it pictures bird evolution not as creating everything new from scratch, but more like rearranging existing pieces, evolutionary blocks, they call them.
So things like tails, feather colors, beak shapes, they're like Lego bricks inherited from ancestors.
Pretty much. Evolution then modifies these blocks, maybe makes a tail longer for balance or display, changes colors for camouflage or attracting mates.
Okay, so it's tinkering, not wholesale invention.
Exactly. A tail block might be adapted for flight stability in one bird, but in a related species, it becomes this bright, flashy signal.
Now, these blocks have specific jobs, right? Tail for balance, colors for signaling, beak for feeding.
Yeah, they all contribute to survival and reproduction in some way. Studying these modular blocks helps us understand how bird families diversified so much.
Now, something important the blog mentions is about the photos on iNaturalist.
Ah, yes, the accuracy point.
Right. They clarify that sometimes the photo used might not have been taken right there in Antonio Pereira.
But the species was definitely observed there by the contributors. It's an important distinction for citizen science data.
And they mention iNaturalist has about an 80% accuracy rate, self-reported, which is pretty good, but not perfect.
No, and that's why careful observation is key. The blog specifically flags a potential identification challenge.
Oh, yeah. Between which birds?
Between the Tesourinha, the fork-tailed flycatcher, and the Lavadeira-mascarada, the masked water tyrant.
Ah, okay. Why are they tricky?
Well, especially if you only get a quick look or the photo isn't super clear, maybe from a distance. They can be confused.
And the blog creator even admitted they might have misidentified one early on.
Yeah, a Tesourinha. It just highlights the need for good photos and careful observation. It happens to everyone.
So let's look at those two birds, the Tesourinha and the Lavadeira-mascarada. What makes them distinct?
Okay, the Tesourinea tyrannus savanna, its most obvious feature is that super long forked tail, like scissors, hence the name Tesourinea.
Right. Very dramatic looking.
Extremely. And the male's tails are even longer. They're migrants, often seen around September, October. They're aerial hunters catching insects on the wing.
And they spread seeds, too?
Apparently so, yes.
Yeah.
Now, the Lavadera-mascarada fluvicola ningata is quite different. Mostly white, but with a distinct black stripe through the eye. The mask.
Okay. Very different look.
Very. And its habits differ too. It likes open areas, usually near water. It catches insects, but often beats them against a branch before eating. Kind of like a bentavi, a great cascadi.
Different feeding style. And nesting.
Usually builds its nest near water, lays about 3 white eggs with brown spots. They seem pretty adaptable and are often seen in pairs, sometimes singing duets.
So very different birds in many ways.
Yeah.
But the blog points out they're related.
Yes, that's the fascinating part. They both belong to the Tyrannidae family, the tyrant flycatchers.
Tyrant flycatchers, okay.
So they share a common ancestor way back. They both mostly eat arthropods, insects, and spiders, and they're active foragers.
But they've diverged quite a bit since then.
Hugely. Look at the tails again. The Tesourena's long tail is likely great for maneuverability and maybe energy-saving gliding during migration.
While the Lavadera-mascarada has a shorter tail, suggesting maybe a different, more direct flight style.
Probably, yeah. More energetic, perhaps. Less suited for long distances. It shows how one feature adapts to different needs.
And the blog mentions they can both be pretty territorial.
Yes, that seems to be a common trait among these Tyrannidios. They can be quite aggressive defending their patch.
So the blog speculates their common ancestor might have been, what, small and feisty?
Something like that. Small, agile, adapted to environments where you had to fight for resources, maybe a bit aggressive, yeah.
And from that ancestor, the whole family radiated out.
That's the concept of adaptive radiation. From one starting point, species diversify to fill all sorts of ecological roles or niches. Some become aerial specialists, like the Tesourinea. Others adapt to waterside life, like the Lavadera-mascarada.
It's like an evolutionary explosion within the family.
Exactly. And scientists use phylogenetic studies looking at genetics and traits to map out these family trees and understand how closely related different species are.
Okay, this connects really well to our other source, the one asking, would a crocodile duck be possible?
Oh, the crocoduck. Yes, that article tackles a common sort of challenge posed to evolution.
It mentions Richard Dawkins being asked about it. The article argues this question kind of misunderstands how evolution and science in general actually works.
Right. It's often used as a sort of gotcha question, implying evolution means anything can just be randomly mashed together.
But science has limits, right? Biological limits, physical laws.
Exactly. Evolution operates within those constraints. It's not magic. It's driven by understandable mechanisms, mutation, and natural selection.
It's a gradual process, not sudden transformations. The article stresses that adaptations stick around only if they actually help an organism survive and reproduce. They need to provide a fitness advantage.
A crocoduck blend probably wouldn't be very fit, would it? It might not swim well or fly well.
Probably not. And evolution builds on what's already there. It modifies existing structures. It doesn't just conjure up entirely new ones out of thin air.
That's a key point. It has to work with the genetic and developmental toolkit that an organism inherits. You can't just slap a duck bill onto a crocodile's developmental plan.
The article also makes the point that evolution is testable. It's falsifiable.
Yes. We can see evidence in fossils, in DNA, in embryology, and importantly, we can observe it happening now, like with antibiotic resistance or virus evolution, or even the kind of local adaptations seen in the Antônio Pereira birds.
So it makes predictions we can actually check. It's not just storytelling.
Correct. And it doesn't promise perfection either, just good enough to survive and pass on genes. Think of flaws in designs, like certain aspects of the human eye. Evolution's a tinkerer, not a perfect engineer.
The article brings in Occam's razor, too. The simplest explanation is often best. Evolution via natural processes is way simpler than invoking constant miracles.
It provides a coherent, evidence-based framework that explains the diversity of life without resorting to supernatural explanations, which fall outside of science.
And it's presented as a universal principle. If life exists elsewhere, it likely evolves too.
So the whole crocoduck idea, the article suggests, comes from wanting reality to fit certain beliefs rather than understanding the actual scientific process.
Science describes reality based on evidence, not wishful thinking.
Precisely. It doesn't promise impossible combinations, just explains the possible step-by-step processes that shaped the life we see.
It really brings us back full circle, doesn't it? From
Yes.
the grand principles of evolution down to the specific birds being meticulously documented by citizens in Antônio Pereira.
It absolutely does. That iNaturalist project, it's not just listing species, it's potentially capturing snapshots of these evolutionary processes in action, local adaptation, maybe even the early stages of divergence.
It shows how powerful these citizen science efforts can be. Every observation adds a small piece to this huge puzzle of understanding life on Earth.
And it really makes you think, doesn't it, about the life in your own local park or your garden?
Yeah, what evolutionary stories are playing out there that we just walk past every day?
Maybe there are subtle variations in the local squirrels or pigeons that hint at adaptations we haven't noticed.
It definitely encourages you to look a bit closer. Perhaps even, fire up iNaturalist yourself and add your own observations.
It's a great way to connect with nature and contribute something valuable.
Well, that was a fascinating journey from Brazil to the basics of biology. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.